Morning, Sandy. Hope you're well. Morning, Graham, and we'll have others joining, I'm sure, very shortly. So, um, yes, thank you for joining us this morning. If you watched the football, I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I'll not talk about it too much because not everyone's into football, I realise. But yes, thanks for joining. We'll get started shortly after 9:30. Morning, everybody. I can see you're all joining. We'll get started very shortly. Just give other people a chance to join in. Um, Please feel free to say hello on the chat. As we go through the presentation this morning, we'll give people the opportunity to ask questions. But yes, we'll get started just in a minute or two. I can see a number of people are joining right now. Okay, as it's now gone past 9:30, we'll get started. Um, Morning, everybody. Um, I hope everybody's feeling well. It's now Friday, so only one more day to the weekend. I don't know where you are, what the weather's doing, but I'm speaking to you from sunny Dorset, and pleased to say for once the sun is actually out, and I hope it's okay where you are. So for today, we're going to have a refresher on the chat names tools, and I will share my screen. Hopefully, you're all seeing that now, and run through the brief agenda for today's meeting. So, my name's Paul Kay. I'm a director at Quick Solutions. We are the software providers of the chat tool. Um, Over the years, I've done a number of these presentations and both regional and national meetings. So if I've met you before, hi, nice to see you again. If I haven't, then nice to meet you for the first time. As far as today's concerned, really, it's an opportunity for you to have a reminder of what the chat tool does. If it's something you're new to, it might be something that is a new experience and something that you might get to use in future. If it's something you were familiar with in the past but just haven't used for a while, again, it's an opportunity for you to get a reminder of the functionality of the system. So we'll start with really a basic overview, a little bit of the history of the chat tool and where it came from. Quick Solutions up to 2015 really had been working in social care. So we provided a piece of software called Quick Care, which is used now by over 800 social care providers to manage their CQC compliance. So they will right now be working with the new single assessment framework that CQC have introduced, and will be preparing for inspection and really meeting Regulation 17 in the Health and Social Care Act in using it as a framework to carry out ongoing governance and quality assurance. We came to the attention of the national team back in 2015 for CHC at a time when they were introducing the new operating model as it was then for CHC, and really to introduce a different way of approaching quality assurance, because I think they were using largely paper-based methods of really working with the CCGs as they were at that time, to be assured that the quality of the CHC service was meeting the requirements of the operating model. So we shared what we could do. We looked at the operating model, and back in 2015 we embarked on a pilot with a number of CCGs as they were then in the London region and in the Midlands region, to really see if the same model that we were adopting with care homes would also work in CHC. We had a successful pilot which ran for a number of months, and as a result of that, NHS decided that the chat tool, as it became known, or the continuing healthcare assurance tool, was something that they would use going forwards to really get a view of from the CCGs of their compliance with the standards. So we have the latest version of the chat tool. So it's been through a change in around 2019, just before the pandemic, where we updated the content. But basically we have an online framework where you can create evidence against the quality standards, in this case the key lines of inquiry relating to assessment and decision making, care planning and commissioning, and enablers. So there's three sort of distinct areas covered by chat, and anybody using it now, it would be the ICBs or their place locations, sublocations, can create evidence statements and use the RAG rating to highlight where they think their strengths and weaknesses are, looking at all of the key lines of inquiry. And the key lines of inquiry, the questions relating to, say, assessment decision making, have suggested sort of responses in terms of what good looks like. So as you are completing the tool, you can benchmark your service against the suggestion of what good looks like, all the way through to what not very good looks like, and potentially start to work on things like action plans where you might want to embed improvement where you've identified a shortfall in your service. So the chat tool is a self-assessment tool, provide ongoing quality assurance. It's an opportunity for ICBs and their sublocations to really prepare evidence to show that they are or aren't meeting the required standards. And it comes with alerts and reminders. So if you set yourselves tasks within your teams, you can assign ownership of those tasks, and the system will alert you by email and will create task lists. So each user, whenever they log on to the system, knows what they need to do. So the objective here really is ongoing benchmarking with the objective of highlighting areas from a local perspective, from an ICB or sublocation perspective, areas that might require improvement, but from NHS's perspective, then providing both regional and national analysis of where the trends and the strengths and weaknesses look. So I remember when we first implemented chat, it really highlighted their issues in terms of transition, and what was thought maybe to be a problem was then borne out very clearly from the reporting on the system, that a number of CCGs at the time were not really delivering what they should have been done in that area. So it will highlight regional and national trends, but ultimately it's for local use for an ICB and a CCG to provide assurance to their own boards that they're aware of how the CHC service, or the all age continuing care service, as it might be referred to now, is performing, and really informing people who use the system with best practice of what that looks like. So giving people a target to aim at when they carry out their self-assessment. a few years after the initial launch of chat, we had discussions with the NHS England national team about what else we could potentially collect through the system, and that eventually became AIMS, which is a sort of companion to chat, but is really based around data. So chat is very much a self-assessment tool, your view, a subjective view, if you like, of the compliance of the service, whereas AIMS is about numbers and what those numbers look like. And in the early days, it used to talk about things like the location of assessments. Some people might remember that the real objective was to reduce the amount of assessments happening outside of a person's own home. Assessments happening in acute settings. That's now changed, and the focus of AIMS now is to provide quarterly reporting on the 28-day referrals and the long waits, as it shows on this slide here. And if you don't meet a certain target, AIMS then requires a sublocation or its ICB to provide an improvement plan. So we haven't met the target for 28 days, but this is what we're going to do. And that is then shared and agreed with the regional team, who will either send it back if they feel it requires a bit more working on, or will agree it and then look to see if that is effective at reducing the number for the following quarter. So you've got two aspects to it. AIMS typically results in an email request to complete the numbers, and then depending on what those numbers are, an automated response can be required if an improvement plan is needed. So you have those two companion systems: chat, self-assessment evidence. AIMS is about data and numbers. So really going through the basics of using the system, if you have a username and password for chat or AIMS, it starts with logging in to your version. So each ICB, each sublocation that is set up on chat has a site unique to them with their evidence that they can access on the system through a web browser. So you go on to Edge or Chrome or Firefox, whatever browser you use. I'd suggest, if you add the website address that's on the screen now, the nhs.quickcloud.com address, on your browser and save it to your favorites. It's easier to find it next time. You can bookmark it or add it to favorites. And if you forget your username and password, then there are links you can click on to reset them. If you don't have a login at all, but you need one, then we need somebody with authority within the ICB to request that. So we have an email address, which I'll share with you later, admin@quicksolutions.com, where you can request new users, provided it comes from as I say, from somebody with authority within the ICB in writing in an email. We will set those users up. And now I'll show you what that actually looks like in practice. So we'll go to a live demo, and there'll be an opportunity to ask questions later. But please feel free to put things in the chat. I'll review the chat after we've done the sort of overview, or make a note of them, and then ask me a bit later if there's something you want me to confirm. So I'm now on my web browser. As you can see, there is the website I just mentioned, nhs.quickcloud.com. I would, if I was adding it to my favorites, just click on this little star here within this particular browser. We can have different levels of permissions. So if you want different users to have access to specific areas of chat, and only those areas, we can set up access to specific parts of the system. And we can have different levels of permissions, everything ranging from just read-only reporting to a normal, what we call full access user, who can perform all the normal functions and run reports. So we'll start with chat, and I've got demonstration site set up here, and the home screen view which is what we're looking at now, the top line relates to the self-assessment by, in this case, an ICB completing chat. So if I press the key here, that tells me what these references relate to. So the A's are all to do with assessment and decision making. C's care planning and commissioning. E's enablers. And the enablers, which came sort of within the second iteration of chat around 2019, really talk about the building blocks, the systems that you have in place, the governance, the journey you're on in terms of integrating within the ICB, the chat service. So, sorry, the CHC service. And the dashboard relates to the number of evidence items we have in each of those areas and how we rate ourselves with the lowest denominator showing on the dashboard. So within each of these areas, so if I talk about timely and compliant verification and decision making, we've got 3 pieces of evidence. I can click on either the table here or the grid. Be easier on the grid if you want to go straight in. That will then reveal the key lines of inquiry relating to that particular subject area. So for each of the 3 sections, you'll see there are subheadings, and within each of those subheadings, there could be one or multiple key lines of inquiry or CLOEs. So in A3, this particular example, we've got 2 questions. Is decision making compliant with the national framework? What processes are in place for decision of eligibility to be completed within 28 days? So this is an opportunity now for the ICB to answer the question as things stand today. So what is the view of the service in relation to eligibility? If you click on the little magnifying glass on the right hand side, you can see it's got a number next to it. That number 1 just tells me I've got 1 piece of evidence previously added onto the system. So I can see on the 4th of June, my colleague Angela was the last person to put some evidence onto the system. If I'm creating a new evidence item, I click up here. If I'm editing the existing evidence, I can click on the little pencil. If I want to archive the evidence, I can click on this little dustbin, and that will archive the evidence. However, if you suddenly think, oh, that was a mistake, I didn't mean to do it, you can still show what your previous evidence was saying, and then you are given some other choices. So I can delete it forever or restore it. So let's assume we're starting with a clean slate, so I'm going to delete it. So we've got a question which for now I have no answer to. So if I want to create an answer to the question, click again up here, and this is the working area. So wherever you see the little magnifying glass, that is the evidence icon, and that is where you can access the evidence entry screen for the particular CLOE that you're working with. So what processes are in place? At this point, you might want a bit of guidance. So we have a couple of buttons relating to the question. The assistant gives you the characteristics of a green rated service, i.e., we're on top of it. So the ICB can evidence there's an effective process in place to ensure that the 28-day referral target's been met. However, you might have an effective process, but it's not achieving 28 days in all cases, which will be yellow, and so on and so forth. And each of the CLOEs has these characteristics. So you've got a target to aim at when it comes to you saying, well, our ICB is or isn't meeting our obligations in this particular area. We can either say, we're on a journey, we're improving, this is what we're doing, or we can say, we've got now a system in place which is delivering, and we're regularly meeting our objectives in that particular area, whatever that might be. So use the assistant to help you. It can also help you later, obviously, then when it physically comes to RAG rating that particular question. So you can type into here your evidence, and then if you want to sort of prove what you're saying with additional information, you can use the examples, which are things you can either talk about. So you could say, you know, we carry out CHC team productivity analysis. We've got reporting in place. Our pathways are in place. And if you have supporting documentation, click on attachments here. You have the opportunity to find appropriate documents which might confirm what you're saying. So you can attach any sort of information you think supports the statement that you're making. Use the examples there to give you some pointers for the sorts of things you can talk about. And at some point in due course, the regional teams can then look at your evidence and say whether they agree with you or not. If they can see evidence that you're moving in the right direction, doing the right things, or if they can make suggestions, and there is the opportunity within chat for your evidence to be reviewed and somebody externally to tell you what they think of your evidence. So here's our evidence statement. This is what we think. And then there's a couple of actions once you've attached your documents in terms of what happens next. So if you're comfortable that things are compliant, you can't see that changing in the near future, you can set a reminder 6 months, maybe even 12 months away, if there's no likelihood of anything needing to change in that area. And then assign an owner, and whoever the owner is, you will then create a task for that person, and they'll be reminded of that task on that date. So in this case, 12 months time, the blue chat owner will be reminded by email to review the evidence. Plus, every time this particular user logs on, the system will create a task list on their home screen, which I'll show you shortly, that will then show them what the most urgent evidence items are. If it's urgent, if you need to look at it next week or maybe even sooner, today onwards, you can set a reminder by clicking on the little calendar on the right-hand side. So if it needs looking at, you want a reminder to look at it in the near future, then you've got the dates there that you can pick. It doesn't have to be months or years away. And when you're done, there's a couple of options. There's a save as draft option, which is really saying to colleagues, I'm still working on it. As you can see there, it's labeled that evidence as draft. Or if you are comfortable that that's now the final position, you can publish the statement. So I've now got one published item. I can see when it was last saved, when it's due for review. I could edit it, archive it, or I can add to it. So I can add more evidence statements. If there are different perspectives I want to talk about, I might even have different people inputting. You can have multiple users all adding to an evidence statement. But ultimately, the objective is to begin by going through the questions, and there may be some direction shortly from NHS England on what they would like you to focus on. But there's nothing stopping you getting started and starting to work through these questions as a benchmarking exercise. And once you've got your evidence in place, you can use the RAG rating on the left-hand side of the Chloe itself to come up with a view. If you want to see what the RAG rating criteria and be reminded, if you just click on this little board, it will remind you of how you should be rating yourselves. Or if you want to view the evidence, just click on that little magnifying glass there. If you want a summary of the evidence, wherever you see these three lines with the three dots here, that's the summary icon. So it will give you access to a summary of all the questions within that subheading or within the entire standard. And you can print that out. So if you want a paper copy, or you could save it as a PDF if you want a digital copy of that evidence. And that summary is also editable. So if you did see something, you think, well, I need to change that, you can open it up from there and go back into the evidence to edit it if you wish to. If you just close the window you're not working on, it will just close those and go back to the underlying page. If you ever get lost in the software, I think a good tactic is just to start again and press home. So if you press home at any time, that will take you back to that grid, and you can then go to the key. Where was I? I was working in A3. Click on that to go back to A3. As you can see here on the bottom right hand side of the screen, for each user, the activities that they are responsible for, so this is the evidence, or in due course action plans, which we'll talk about, that they are responsible for, are listed, and you can quickly go to those Chloe's by clicking on them. So I can see we've got some evidence there. If I wanted to update it now, literally I can do whatever I would do by clicking through. It's sort of prepared it already as a job for me. I just need to go in and maybe look at the assistant, the examples again, and come up with my evidence for that particular question. When I'm happy, save as draft or publish. If I wanted to change the RAG rating at that point because I've changed the evidence, just say yes, and the system will take you to that part of the software for updating the evidence. So we were just looking at that particular question, E5.3. Do we have a digital system in place for a full end-to-end CHC process? I know it's something that's a hot topic within ICBs, particularly with sublocations, maybe using different systems, or starting to on a journey to implement fully end-to-end digital systems. If for whatever reason your evidence is that you're not compliant in a particular area, let's say for argument's sake, you've got a problem with your invoicing processes, we've got a red flag against that particular question, so you'd expect in your evidence to see something that indicates that you're not compliant. The next icon next to the magnifying glass, where you see a little tick, that is the action plan icon. So there's an opportunity for you to capture things that you think require actions, and you want to make sure can then be reported on later. So the action plan template, you can create action plans for any purpose, or in this case you can have action plans linked to the specific key lines of inquiry. So let's say I want an action plan for 7.1, which is in relation to invoicing processes. To build my plan, I just click on the plan tab here and explain what I'm going to do. So we are going to improve, excuse my typing, our invoicing process, and it will ask how you're going to do it, what resources you need, etc. Each plan has an owner, so you give it a name. So this is my invoicing plan. Let's say I own it, but I want to apply it to my colleagues, so I can have up to 10 users all active within a single site, all potentially being involved. The owner ultimately has responsibility for the plan and will sign it off, but I can apply it to other users, and those users can all have their own notes and input on the plan. I can attach documents to the plan. I can add my notes as a commentary, and I can set the parameters in terms of a deadline. So let's have the plan done by the end of August, and please remind me maybe a week before, and the system will alert and email everyone involved on those dates to remind them, plus that task list, that list of notifications, those jobs on my home screen will also be updated with those dates and those tasks. So I could publish that plan. If it's in response to a review, which would be where somebody maybe in the regional team has requested some action, you can link the action plan to a review, or if it's something off your own back, just say it's not linked to any review in this case. I'm going to publish the plan. So you've now got a sort of counterweight, if you like, to the evidence. You've got your plan in place. I can see from this user interface here, I've got 3 pieces of evidence, but I've now got 1 action plan. If I look at the summary for that section, again, I can see there's an invoicing plan. And if I want to open the plan and update it as we make progress, I can use this sliding bar to show how far we're going. And ultimately, when it's done, I can sign it off. But it will keep a copy of every action plan you've ever done. And there's opportunities for you to duplicate previous plans or reopen them if you if you think you've gone a bit fast and you need to go back and carry on working on an existing plan. So you've got action plans, evidence, you've got those tasks, and the RAG ratings and those actions can all be reported on. So you can go to your reports builder, and there's a number of standard reports. So if I want a listing of all my evidence or all my action plans, go to an evidence listing report. I can select a particular user. I can select different statuses and things like that. But if I just want all of the evidence on this site, I can save that report. That will create a saved report, and then I can just run it whenever I want and access my evidence. So there's a number of different report types. So depending on what you want to do, you can play with the reports, and we have the support desk available, so we can help you with reporting if you need to. 125 pieces of evidence. I can sort them by clicking on any of these columns. I can sort by date, by standard, by title, so this will put them all in order. And you can also click on them, so it's interactive. You can go in and even edit the evidence from these reports. So this is about reporting on activity on the system, who's using it. Are they keeping their evidence up to date? Is it due or overdue? But if you want sort of headline views on the current progress, at a higher level, you could run reports like this. So give me a status of all the key lines of inquiry, show it to me as a grid, which is one of my favorite report formats. You then save that. Whenever you want to report on chat and showing where the progress is, there it is. So I can see instantly we have areas rated green, yellow, red, or whatever. And you can run reports over time, so you can do a trend analysis and things like that. So that's the main function of the self-assessment, bit of reporting. I'm very quickly going to just remind you that chat also has the capability of doing surveys. We have standard surveys that we've provided. We also have some surveys in particular regions. So in the Northwest, they have something called the Peach survey, which we've enabled, which is around the assessment of people's experience of their assessment process. If you want somebody to fill in one of those surveys, their email address, you can literally just paste it into here. If you want to create your own surveys or own emails, each survey has a unique URL. You could use that to create a link on your website, on social media. You can create a QR code. So there's lots of ways you could just save it and open that link on your favorites on your browser and have somebody fill in the survey. But it's an opportunity for people to explain their experience of the CHC process. They would typically fill it in either on paper or on a smartphone, and they can say what they feel. They can add their comments in relation to the assessment process. It has a couple of sections. If you haven't filled in the all the fields, it will remind you to do it. And once that survey response is submitted, it will list all of the previous responses. It will add into the equation any new ones, and you can review them. You can even create action plans from those if there are things that you found that you need to act on. But what people really like about the surveys, I think, is that the results are collated for you. So you can see what the answers are to those particular questions on an ongoing basis. So the more surveys you get, the more meaningful they become and more statistically relevant. So if you think that's of interest, let us know. We can certainly assist you in getting up and running with the surveys. If you don't want the standard surveys or you want to start building your own, there is a bolt-on module to chat that you can buy as a local ICB, and you can use it to build any sort of electronic forms. We have people using it to build risk assessments and audits and things like that. So that's the survey aspect. By all means use it, but I think the key thing is to focus on the quality assurance. Click on the grid from the home screen to go into the evidence, or for an overarching view, the assurance menu up here is a way of accessing all the current evidence, and it's showing you at a high level how much evidence you have in each section and how you rate yourselves in those areas. As and when the regional team reviews your evidence, that will appear as a second line on your home screen, and the comments from the region who might have reviewed your evidence will be visible at that point. So for each of the NHS regions, the regional teams will have overviews like this. So they'll be able to see the evidence across all of the ICBs in their region. They'll be able to see if there's any common areas where the RAG ratings indicate people are suggesting there's an issue. They'll be able to look at your evidence by clicking on the grid and seeing what the how the questions are being answered. And they can also use the review function to make their own comments known. So there is a we say, you say, if you like, scenario where the regional person can add in their comments, add documents, and on the right-hand side is the reviewer's RAG rating. So self-assessment, self-assessed evidence, but the reviewer can make their comments and use their RAG rating. And that will appear, as I said before, as a secondary line on the home screen when your evidence has been reviewed. So it's entirely up to the regions, what their capacity is to review evidence and when they might do that. But should they choose to do it, as and when they do it, you'll see that second line there under your home screen grid. I can see the review, click on here, and you can see the comments. And also, when you're actually working within your evidence, you'll see that once the evidence has been reviewed, there is a review tab where you can see the comments, but also there will be a review tab against the actual evidence item. So wherever you see review, if there's something in there, that's the reviewer's RAG rating and the reviewer's comments and whatever attachments they might have suggested. Gone into that in quite a lot of detail. We'll also have a very quick look at AIMS, which is something that happens quarterly and starts with a request for the ICB or their sublocations to fill in the bits of information relating to the long waits and the 28 days. If the numbers you've put in don't match the meet the minimum targets, then the system would create an email alert to the nominated users to say you need to fill in an improvement plan. When you then log into the system, and on your home screen, you'll see a blue button, and the blue button will take you to that improvement plan. So it will list the questions that you need to answer, and rather than the magnifying glass, it's a slightly different format. You click on the little Q and create your answers to that particular question. So who's filling in this response? Have we met the projected performance? And save. So as you save your questions, it will start to build up. You'll see that little Q has turned green. When I've completed my improvement plan, you mark as complete, and that then notifies the region that your plan is done, and it then requires them to approve it or not, as the case may be. So you've got that process relating to the numbers, improvement plans if required. If you're working on a sublocation level, you can escalate your plan, and it then gets signed off by the ICB before being submitted to the region. But initially, you would probably have seen it in the recent last couple of weeks. Request to fill in AIMS, put in the numbers, do the improvement plans, meet the target dates for submitting them, and then, as I say, the regions will come back to you if they require any further clarification. So I know that's quite a lot of detail, but I hope that's been useful as a reminder of what the system does. I think the self-assessment would be the initial direction I would go, but if you're interested in the surveys, then by all means feel free to have a play with those and see if there's anything that can be that we can help you with, if you like, in terms of getting started on those surveys. So I'm going to now stop sharing for a moment, and I'll ask if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask me relating to what they've seen. So you can use the chat, or if you put your hand up, I could potentially unmute you and you could ask the question in person. So I've got a question from Matthew. Looks like Hampshire Isle of Wight do not complete chat or AIMS, as we have another NHS review tool in place in regular government meetings. Is this going to be mandatory as it duplicates the ICB's internal governance processes? I think the point here, Matthew, is that in order for information to be comparable, everybody has to be using the same system. So the point with chat was having a standardized approach. You know, what happened before chat, when people had their own approaches to assurance, was that you then lost the ability to compare because you weren't comparing apples with apples. The need to duplicate what you're doing already, you know, I think is, and whether it's mandatory is a decision for NHS, but they do fund the chat tool nationally for every ICB. AIMS is certainly mandatory, and I believe that the regional teams are going to be asking people to complete chat anyway. But if you've got concerns, it's a discussion really you need to have with your NHS regional team, you know, who can discuss with you, you know, the merits of your own system versus chat. But yeah, I'm not going to say it's mandatory, but that's something that you need to consider. A question from Sandra. We wanted to add new users, but this was declined. You can add new users. I think if you want to add in new users, then if you could just email the address I put in the chat there, admin@quicksolutions.com, and explain who needs access and why, we'd certainly look at it. If there was a reason why, you know, the region or the ICB were not comfortable with you adding those users, then we'd obviously have to take that into consideration. But initially, all new user requests, please go to admin@quicksolutions.com, which is also our support email address. So you can put in any support queries whenever you like to that address, or alternatively call our support desk, which is on this number here. I'll just check through and see if I've missed any other questions. Which button was the key to see all levels? So that was a question from Sandra. I think if I share my screen again, I'll just quickly refresh that one. So if you are looking to see all of the compliance across all of the standards within chat, I think the option I would use, you know, obviously you've got the home screen, which is giving you the view, but the assurance menu, just click on there. That will show you all of the standards, and if you click on each of the subheadings, they will expand or decrease to show you the content within. And then from here, you can click on the magnifying glass to access the evidence. So assurance menu, magnifying glass, or the home screen, and then click on the grid. I hope that answers your question. Let me see if there's any more. Okay, Sandra's got it. Well done, Sandra. Are there user guides for you to refer to? Asked Sandy. On the system, there is a help menu. So you click on the help chat and AIMS, which is on the top right-hand side of the menu. There are training videos you can access showing you how to use it. There's video guides on using AIMS. We can also provide additional assistance, so I would suggest use our help desk service, so either email or phone in, and we'll be very, very happy to take you through it. Are there any further questions? I can't see any in the chat. I can't see any more hands up. I think we're just about done with our allotted time. So if you do have more questions, then please get in touch. As I say, the admin@quicksolutions.com email address would be the one to go for. If you could just briefly say in the chat if you felt this was useful or not, I'd appreciate it. I'll now wrap this session up, leave you to the rest of the day. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. I hope it's been a useful reminder of what the chat tool will do, and I'll leave the NHS regional and national teams to really give you guidance on what their expectations will be going forwards. But yes, thank you everybody for your time this morning, and yeah, we are here to help. So please don't be shy and get in touch if you do want to get started and you need assistance. We'll be very happy to help you. Thank you, and enjoy your weekends as it's Friday. Hopefully not that too far away.